I didn't move to the desert looking for a fight. I just wanted peace on my 6 acres. But the HOA across the street had other plans. They sent police to my gate so often that officers started greeting me by name 17 times in 90 days. And the worst part? Every call started with the same woman, same voice, same fake concern. But here's the thing about years in federal investigations. You learn not to shout, you learn to collect proof, and you learn to wait. So I waited. I waited just long enough for her to tie the noose around her own neck. And this is how she did it. My name's Nick Sanders, 42 years old, former federal investigator specializing in property crimes, land fraud, contract manipulation, basically the kind of scams most people never even know they're victims of until it's too late. 15 years I spent digging through lies. 15 years listening to million-dollar developers pretend they didn't notice a missing signature, or watching petty bureaucrats twist the law like saltwater taffy. After a while, you start to wonder if the whole world's allergic to doing the right thing. I didn't retire because I couldn't handle the work. I retired because I couldn't handle the politics. So I cashed out early, grabbed my tools, my books, and the 2 people who make life worth the trouble, my wife Jess and our 12-year-old daughter Maddie, and we headed west. What we found was 6 acres of quiet desert earth just outside a little development called Desert Palms Estates. Now, when I say quiet, I mean the kind of quiet you only get when you're far from everything. The wind moves a certain way out there. You can hear a single quail hop across the gravel. At night, the stars spill so thick across the sky they almost look fake. The house itself was perfect for a man like me. Thick adobe walls, weathered terracotta roof, a big wraparound porch, and a detached garage big enough for me to turn into a full workshop. Restoring classic cars was my escape back then. Still is. And best of all, no HOA. Not my problem, not my jurisdiction, not my life. Desert Palms sat next door, but my parcel sat completely outside their authority. I checked the maps twice before signing the deed. I'd dealt with too many accidental annexations in my career to take anyone's word for it. For the first week, I felt like I'd finally outrun the nonsense of my old life. Jess unpacked her garden tools, Maddie got her dog a new tennis ball, and I spent my days wading through the desert silence, wondering how I'd gotten so lucky. But peace is a fragile thing. Sometimes it disappears so quietly, you don't even notice it slipping out the back door. On the 7th morning, just 7, I walked out to check the mailbox when I noticed something wedged under the gate. A thick envelope. No stamp, no handwritten address, just a cheap printed label. Notice of mandatory HOA integration. Desert Palms Estates. I remember laughing, out loud. The kind of laugh that comes from your belly because you truly, honestly believe the universe is joking with you. I opened it right there in the sun. And as I read, my smile faded, a little more with each sentence. It was written in that fake-friendly legal language, the kind that says, "We're smiling while we stab you." The letter claimed that my property was contiguously relevant to Desert Palms and therefore fell under their expanding jurisdiction. It informed me that I had 10 days to sign a compliance agreement, pay a $4,000 initiation fee, and begin monthly dues. If I failed, administrative and legal action may be taken. I stood there holding that letter, watching the desert shimmer in the heat, thinking, they have absolutely no idea who they just picked a fight with. Jess came outside, coffee in hand. "You okay? You look like you swallowed a cactus." I held up the notice. She read it, blinked twice, then shook her head. "Nick, are they serious?" "Oh, they're serious," I said. "And they're also full of it. Because here's the thing. If there is one subject in this world I know better than anyone inside Desert Palms, it's property law." Their letter quoted bylaw sections that didn't apply to private parcels. They referenced parcel IDs, but mine wasn't listed anywhere in their governing documents. Contiguously relevant isn't even a real legal term. It's something you make up when you want to sound smart to people who don't know better. Too bad for them. I knew better. I knew exactly what they were trying to do. I spent the rest of the afternoon digging out my records. Grant deed, title insurance, county maps, zoning confirmations. I printed everything, highlighted everything, and drafted a response letter that could have doubled as a legal seminar. It ended like this. My property is not, has never been, and will never be subject to your governance. Any further attempts to claim jurisdiction will be considered harassment. I mailed copies to the HOA, the county land office, and the city planning department. Jess kissed me on the cheek and said, "There, done." For a brief moment, I let myself believe that was true, that the worst of it was a stupid letter from a desperate HOA. But that was before I met Karen Peterson. Before the first police cruiser rolled up to my gate. Before the cameras, the sabotage, the fire, and the night everything finally snapped. Back then, I still believed I'd moved here for peace. I didn't know yet that I'd moved here for a war. I've dealt with every kind of property scam imaginable: forged deeds, ghost parcels, HOA presidents who tried to annex a neighbor's barbecue pit because the smoke affected community morale. But even after all those years in federal work, nothing prepared me for the stupidity packed inside the Desert Palms mandatory integration notice. After I finished drafting my response, sharp enough to slice through concrete, I didn't just mail it. No, I wanted to set the tone. So, after sundown, I drove into town and walked right up to the Desert Palms community bulletin board, the sacred cork shrine where they posted pool hours and lawn violations. And I taped my response directly in the center, right below their laminated "Welcome New Members" sign. A couple of residents stared at me like I was spray painting the 10 Commandments. I just nodded and said, "Public notice. Nothing illegal about it." Then I got in my truck and drove home under the Arizona moon. Jess laughed when I told her, "That's one way to make sure they read it." "Certified copies are already in the mail," I said. "Karen's going to have a fun morning once it hits her desk." For a moment, the house felt peaceful again. The next morning, the desert was quiet in that eerie, heavy way that tells you something isn't right. I stepped outside with my coffee, scanning the property like old habits trained me to. That's when I saw it. Footprints, light ones, deliberate ones, a trail cutting past my mesquite trees, 50 yards inside my property line, nowhere near the gate. No mailman walks that track, no delivery driver either. My gut went cold. I followed the prints toward the workshop, slowed my pace, then stepped around the corner and froze. There she was, a woman in her mid-50s, stiff posture, clipboard clutched tight, sunglasses reflecting the rising sun. But she wasn't looking at my house, she wasn't even looking at me. She was staring past my workshop, all the way to the undeveloped ridgeline at the very back of my 6 acres. And she was scribbling something on her clipboard, fast, focused, like she was mapping something. Coordinates, measurements, sightlines. None of it made sense yet, but a small alarm bell went off behind my ribs, quiet but sharp. I stepped closer. "You're about 50 yards past the no trespassing sign," I said, voice steady. "You want to explain why you're on my land before I call the sheriff?" She didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, she clicked her pen, folded her clipboard to her chest, and turned toward me with the smug calm of someone who thinks the rules never applied to her. "I'm Karen Peterson," she said, "president of the Desert Palms Estates HOA. I wanted to make sure you received our welcome packet." I kept my eyes on her clipboard, specifically the corner of a page sticking out. A rough sketch of the ridgeline, a dotted line, 2 circles, something that looked like a measurement bracket. I didn't know what it meant, but later, after uncovering the easement scam, I'd think back to this exact second and realize she wasn't trespassing to meet me. She was scouting something. "Oh, I got your packet," I said, "and I posted my response on your community bulletin board last night." That landed like a dart to the forehead. Her jaw tightened. Micro-expression, loss of control. "We expect cooperation from all adjacent properties," she said. "This," I replied, waving my hand over the desert behind me, "isn't adjacent. It's private land. And you're trespassing." "That's a strong word," she said. "It's the legal one." She inhaled slowly, nostrils flaring. Then she dropped a line she clearly thought would intimidate me. "The last owners resisted too. They left within a month." "Well," I said, "I'm not them." Another micro-expression, a crack in the mask. Then she spun on her heel and walked back across my land like she owned it. I watched her until her shoes finally hit the asphalt beyond my gate. Inside, Jess was packing Maddie's lunch. "She finally showed up, didn't she?" Jess said. "She was deeper on the property than the workshop," I said, staring at the ridgeline, taking notes. Jess's eyebrows lifted. That doesn't sound like a neighborly visit. No, I said quietly. It sounds like someone planning something. Jess folded her arms, the way she does when she's thinking through a problem. You sent the response. You followed the law. If she crosses the line again, we document, we escalate, and we protect what's ours. I nodded, but the knot in my chest stayed tight. Because here's what I knew. What years in federal investigations had branded into me. People like Karen don't step back when they're wrong. They step harder. And I had the sinking feeling this wasn't even her first step. 2 quiet days passed after my brief standoff with Karen. 2 days where the desert felt peaceful again, almost like it was holding its breath. But on the morning of the 3rd day, the air changed. I was in the workshop, elbow deep under the hood of a '68 GTO when I heard it. Tires on gravel, multiple tires, slow, deliberate, authoritative. I stepped outside just as 2 police cruisers rolled up to my front gate, lights flashing, no sirens. The exact posture officers use when they're approaching a potential threat, but don't want to spook the neighborhood. Already, my jaw clenched. Here we go. 2 officers got out. One was tall, sharp-eyed, posture straight, the kind of young cop who actually pays attention. The other had a mustache that looked like it was losing a custody battle against puberty. The tall one raised a loudspeaker. "Sir, please step outside with your hands visible." I wiped my hands on a rag and muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I walked toward the gate slowly, calmly. Years in federal enforcement teach you how to move in ways that say, "I'm not the problem, but I'm not scared of you either." "Officers," I said, "this is my property. How can I help you?" Puberty mustache cleared his throat. "Sir, are you the one occupying this residence?" "Occupying?" I repeated. "I own it." The tall one checked his tablet. "We received a call from a resident in Desert Palms Estates, reported possible squatting, unauthorized entry into a private residence, and—" he hesitated. "Claims the real homeowner moved out months ago." I couldn't help a short, dry laugh. "Let me guess," I said. "Blonde hair, sunglasses at sunrise, stiff posture, voice like a broken smoke detector." Mustache tried not to smile. Tall one failed entirely. "That does match the caller," he admitted. "Her name's Karen Peterson," I said. "And she's trespassing on my patients." Mustache straightened. "Sir, if you could show ID and any ownership—" "Oh, I can show you a lot more than that," I said. "Follow me." Inside my office, I laid out my documentation like a dealer laying down a winning hand. Grant deed, title insurance, official parcel maps, zoning confirmations, GIS printouts with my boundaries highlighted in red. The tall officer went through each page carefully, methodically. Mustache leaned in, whispering under his breath like he was taking notes in class. Finally, the tall officer nodded. "Everything checks out." I tapped at the stack of papers. "Next time someone calls claiming I'm a squatter, you can save yourselves a trip." Mustache coughed awkwardly. "Sorry about this, sir." Caller described the situation as urgent. "Yeah," I said. "Your caller also wandered 50 yards past my no trespassing sign yesterday. That's on my security footage." I pulled up the clip of Karen at the gate, arms crossed, face twisted, like she just sniffed bad milk. They watched silently. Then the tall one extended his hand. "Mr. Sanders, I'm Officer Riley. We'll make a note of this. No signs of criminal activity. This is clearly a civil matter." "Thank you, Officer Riley," I said. "And for the record, using 911 to enforce HOA fantasies isn't civil, it's harassment." Riley gave a slow, understanding nod. As I walked them back toward the gate, that familiar scratching feeling hit the back of my neck. I turned, and there she was, Karen, standing across the road with 2 HOA disciples in pastel polos, arms crossed, like she was posing for a tyrant's portrait. Riley and Mustache both noticed her. Riley exhaled through his nose. Not angry, not scared, just annoyed. Mustache rolled his eyes so slightly I almost missed it. Good. They were already tired of her. Karen raised her chin. "This isn't over, Mr. Sanders," she called out. "Compliance is inevitable." Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the arrogance of someone who believed paperwork was a weapon, and she knew how to swing it. I stepped to the gate. "What's inevitable," I said, "is you learning where your jurisdiction ends. And it ends on the other side of that road." One of the HOA minions tried to say something. Karen cut him off sharply. Don't speak. Riley shot her a look that said he had already filed her under problem resident. He turned to me. We'll file the report, Mr. Sanders. Call us if anything else happens. Oh, I said, meeting Karen's stare. You'll be hearing from me. Karen stiffened. Then she spun and marched off, dragging her 2 silent ducklings behind her. It should have ended there, but people like Karen don't retreat. They escalate, and this was only her opening move. The first couple of police visits were annoying. By the end of the first week, they were routine, and by the end of the month, they felt like part of the daily mail route. Karen wasn't testing me anymore. She was escalating. 3 days after Riley's original visit, another cruiser rolled up, claiming illegal construction. I showed permits. They left apologizing. 2 days later, another visit, noise violation, at 3 in the afternoon, with nothing louder on my property than the wind brushing the mesquite trees. They apologized too. Another couple of days passed. Another cruiser. Possible weapon threat. I held up the ratchet in my hand. This is a wrench, officer. Its kill count is 0. One cop laughed. The other pretended not to. Behind them, Karen, standing across the road with her arms crossed and her lips curled like she'd won a small prize. She was getting bolder. When Riley returned a few days later, he didn't show up with suspicion. He showed up with exhaustion. He walked to the gate and didn't even bother pretending this was official. Mr. Sanders, he said with a sigh, good morning, I guess. What am I accused of today? I asked. Destroying HOA morale? Suspicious adult male behind the workshop, he read off his tablet. Caller says he might be trespassing on your property. Jess stepped onto the porch, herbs in hand. That would be my husband, she said, the man who lives here. Riley's lip twitched. We did the walkthrough, clear, as always. After finishing his note-taking, he lowered his voice. Someone's abusing the emergency line, Mr. Sanders. I tilted my head toward Desert Palms. You mean the one staring holes into us right now? Riley turned. Karen stood there again. Sunglasses, clipboard, posture stiff as rebar. He didn't hide his irritation. Yeah, he said quietly. Her. Then the calls got ridiculous. Illegal trench. Suspicious burning smell. Unauthorized structures. Possible unlicensed animals. Not possible. We didn't have animals. One evening while I was welding, Riley pulled up again, stepping out before the cruiser had even fully stopped. Mr. Sanders, he called, you threatening a cactus today? Maybe harboring a rogue tumbleweed? I barked a laugh I didn't know I needed. It was only a matter of time, I said. He shook his head. No one else wanted the call. Dispatch asked if I could handle it. That's never good. He leaned in. These false reports, they're not random. Someone's trying hard to create a narrative. That word again. Narrative. Like someone was building a case brick by brick, ready to drop it on my head when the time felt right. Someone who needed me to look like a danger. Someone who needed a pretext. Karen wasn't chaotic. She was calculating. And she wasn't done. Not even close. Then came the worst call of all. A Wednesday. Hot, still, quiet. Jess was tending basil pots on the porch. Maddie was 10 feet away, tossing a ball for the dog. I was checking irrigation. I heard the cruiser before I saw it. Fast. Too fast. Kicking gravel like it was arriving to a domestic violence call. Riley stepped out with a different expression this time. Concern. Mr. Sanders, he said carefully. We got a report of a possible child endangerment situation. My whole body went still. What exactly did the caller say? I asked, voice flat. Riley swallowed. Claimed your daughter was unsupervised. Around dangerous chemicals. Chemicals? I looked down at the irrigation hose in my hand. Jess went stiff, jaw locked. What chemicals? She demanded. Point to them. Riley lifted his hands gently. We have to check. It's procedure. I gave Maddie a reassuring nod, though my chest felt tight. We walked over. There were no chemicals, no danger, just a mother and daughter in their own yard, living their own life. Riley's shoulders tightened as he wrote the report. He wasn't just irritated now. He was angry. Mr. Sanders, he said, voice lower, this call wasn't just false. It was malicious. Jess wrapped an arm protectively around Maddie. Who called it in? She asked. Riley didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes drifted, slowly, deliberately, toward the HOA entrance. And there she was, Karen, standing across the road like she'd been waiting for her cue. Not smiling, not jeering, just observing. Cold, clinical, calculating how her lie landed. Jess whispered, barely containing herself. She used our daughter, Nick. She dragged our child into this. She didn't just cross a line, she incinerated it. I didn't trust myself to speak. Riley stepped closer. You need to document everything, he said softly. Every call, every interaction, every shadow she casts on your land. I have cameras everywhere, I said. Every angle, every minute. Good, he whispered, because people don't weaponize child protective services unless they're preparing something much bigger. He paused, studying me with a look I'd never seen on him before. Some of us know you're not the problem here, he added. When he turned to walk away, he looked at Karen again. But this time, it wasn't annoyance, it was suspicion. Deep, professional suspicion. That night, after Maddie fell asleep, I stood in her doorway and watched her breathing softly in the glow of her nightlight. Jess touched my arm. She's getting worse, she whispered. Karen won't stop. I kept my eyes on our daughter. No, I said, but neither will I. And that was the moment the war shifted. It wasn't about fences or paperwork anymore. It was about protecting my family from a woman who wanted to break us, because my refusal threatened something she wasn't ready to reveal yet. The narrative she was crafting, I wasn't going to let her finish it. I was going to take the pen out of her hand and turn it against her. I sat at the dining table long after the last patrol car had driven off. Jess and Maddie were inside watching some nature documentary, but my mind was chewing on something else entirely. People don't escalate like Karen had unless something is forcing their hand. Noise complaint? Sure. Fake building violations? Annoying but common. But child endangerment? That wasn't irritation. That was desperation. And desperate people leave footprints. I pulled the HOA welcome packet from the drawer, a stack of glossy nonsense I hadn't bothered reading, and began flipping through it slowly, page by page, letting my instincts go to work. Most of it was exactly what I expected. Holiday decoration rules, lawn height limits, garbage bin placement policies, bureaucratic junk meant to keep bored retirees occupied. But buried near the back was a small map, a decorative thing at first glance. Pastel colors, labeled walking paths, future community upgrades. Except one detail didn't make sense. A dotted line, a proposed future access path, ran right up to the back of my property. Not in front, not near the driveway. The back, the ridgeline, the same place I'd seen Karen staring at on day 2. That wasn't a coincidence. I scanned the map again. There was a tiny QR code printed in the corner, something most people would ignore, but I wasn't most people. I grabbed my phone and scanned it. The link opened a public-facing HOA project page, mostly empty, but in the website's code, buried in the metadata, was a file name, gpdevmou.pdf.mou, Memorandum of Understanding. I'd written dozens of them in my career. Someone had uploaded something, then tried to hide it by removing the link, but they forgot the file name was still in the source code. I copied it, deleted the rest of the URL trash, and tried accessing the file directly. The page loaded instantly, and there it was, a real, fully signed MOU between Desert Palms HOA and a company called Green Vista Developments, a name I recognized immediately. They built boutique golf courses across Arizona and New Mexico, usually tacked onto upscale retirement communities for marketing purposes. The MOU stated, politely and legally, Desert Palms would provide utility access. Green Vista would provide funding. HOA would secure an uninterrupted access easement before construction completion deadline, June 30th. Today was June 7th. Well, that explained the fire under Karen's chair. But there was more. At the very bottom of the document, there was a line. Initial deposit received. See attached confirmation. Except there was no attachment. I dug deeper. When someone removes a linked file but doesn't scrub the directory, it still sits on the server. You just have to guess the name. So, I guessed. Deposit puff, payment puff, transfer puff, nothing. Then I tried check bingo. A grainy photo popped up. A bank deposit slip for 42 fin. Recipient, Karen Peterson. Memo, easement guarantee. Not HOA, not the board, not the community. Karen. In her name. She wasn't doing this for the HOA. She wasn't doing this for community compliance. She had taken a private deposit, a big one, and she had about 3 weeks left to deliver the easement she had promised, which meant delivering my land. Jess walked in behind me while I stared at the check. "What is that?" she asked. "Motive," I said. She leaned over my shoulder, reading carefully. Her brow tightened. "She already took the money," Jess whispered. "Yep, and she can't get the easement unless you join the HOA. "Exactly. She's willing to destroy our life for $42,000? "Oh no," I said, leaning back. "That's just the deposit. Once construction starts, there's another $500,000 tied to access and utility approvals." Jess let out a slow whistle. "So, she's trying to build a case that you're a danger, irresponsible, unfit, something that forces the county to step in." Right again. "And then she swoops in with a community oversight offer. Now you're thinking like she thinks." Jess shook her head. "It's fraud, blackmail, abuse of power." "It's also stupid," I said, "because now I know what she wants. And when you know what someone wants, you can trap them with it," Jess finished. I allowed myself the smallest smile. "Exactly." I opened a new folder on my laptop titled Karen, Intent, Motive, Pattern. And then I started filling it with everything I'd found. The map, the QR code, the source code screenshot, the MOU PDF, the deposit slip, a timeline of her escalation. A list of every police call with timestamps. Patterns matter. Intent matters. Corroborating evidence matters. I wasn't just documenting harassment anymore. I was building a prosecutable case. A case that would survive appeals. A case that a judge would tear apart like raw meat. Jess finally exhaled. "So, what's the next move?" I clicked the laptop shut. "She's running out of time," I said, "and desperate people always make mistakes." Jess watched me carefully. "You're setting a trap." "I'm not setting anything," I said. "I'm just preparing a stage." "A stage for what?" "For her to walk right into," I replied. Because what Karen didn't know, what she wouldn't know until it was far too late, was that I had spent 15 years watching corrupt officials, shady contractors, and crooked HOAs dig their own graves. And I was very, very good at handing them shovels. The morning after I uncovered Karen's motive, I walked outside with my coffee expecting the usual quiet desert breeze. Instead, a white county pickup was parked at my gate. The inspector stepped out before I even spoke. Clipboard, polite, tired eyes. A man who had probably spent the last decade dealing with people who lied worse than they gardened. "Report of unpermitted electrical work in your workshop," he said. I sighed. "Anonymous complaint?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I opened the workshop and showed him everything. The breakers, the permits, the invoices. He checked each item, nodded, signed his sheet, and apologized with a look only paperwork veterans share. By noon, 2 more county trucks rolled in. Fire inspector, zoning compliance, noise control officer. 3 different departments. 5 different clipboards, the same phrase every time. "We received a complaint. 7 inspections in 6 hours. Jess leaned on the porch rail with her arms crossed, trying not to look angry. "She's escalating," she said. "Feels like she's trying to break us." "She is," I replied. "She's out of time." Jess nodded slowly. She'd seen the contract. She knew the deadline. Around 3, things shifted from annoying to absurd. 4 HOA board members marched up to my gate, Karen in the center like a second-rate general with a clipboard instead of a sword. "We're here for a community safety inspection," she declared. I rested both hands on the gate. "No." Her chin jerked upward. "You don't get to refuse. That's exactly what I get to do. You're obstructing. You're trespassing," I cut in. 54 feet inside my legal boundary. GIS map confirms it. "Want me to pull it up?" One board member whispered, "This area is..." I pointed at him. "Finish that sentence and you'll be explaining it to a sheriff's deputy under oath." He shut up. Karen's jaw tightened. "This isn't over, Mr. Sanders." "I know," I said. "June 30th is coming fast." Her eyes widened. Just a flash. Then she spun around and marched off with her pastel army scrambling behind. She'd lost the day. But the night was a different story. Right after sunset, the house was finally quiet. Jess made dinner. Maddie sketched in her notebook. The desert glowed gold under the last bit of light. Then my phone buzzed. Motion alert. East fence. I tapped the screen. Static. Camera 2. Static. Camera 3. Blackout. 3 cameras down in 10 seconds. That wasn't malfunction. That was deliberate. "Nick?" Jess called. "Everything okay?" "Stay inside." I stepped out, walking slow, keeping to the shadows behind the workshop. The desert went silent except for a low engine rumbling somewhere beyond my property line. 2 silhouettes moved near the fence, not smooth, not confident. One kept looking over his shoulder. The other stumbled climbing out of the truck bed. Amateurs, but dangerous amateurs. They rolled a barrel off the tailgate, a heavy, hollow thud echoing across the ground. The second guy hissed, "Quiet!" Dave whispered back, panicked, "I'm trying." I almost smiled. The HOA polo he wore glowed under the moonlight like a beacon. He dropped into my yard, dragging the barrel a few feet before rubbing his wrist. A nervous tick I'd seen a dozen times at the gate. They dumped 4 barrels in under 4 minutes. Fast, sloppy, scared, then scrambled back to their truck. The engine roared, gravel flew, and they disappeared down the side road. I waited until the night swallowed the sound. Then I headed not to the barrels, but 20 yards right, toward a small creosote bush. I crouched and brushed away the sand. There it was. A trail cam, battery-powered, infrared, no Wi-Fi, completely immune to the little signal jammer Dave bought off the internet. Still blinking, still recording. I popped the SD card out and held it up. "This," I whispered, "is the difference between a complaint and a conviction." Jess met me at the door, her face tight. "You got something?" "Oh yeah." I set the SD card on the counter. "I got everything," she exhaled. "So, what happens now?" I turned off the kitchen lights and looked out into the dark. "Now," I said softly, "now we stop playing defense." The barrels sat quietly in the moonlight behind us, but the real bomb was in my hand. A tiny SD card holding night vision footage of Dave committing a felony for a woman dangling on the edge of ruin. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we start building the trap." And Karen Peterson was already halfway inside it. The morning after the barrel drop, I woke up before the sun. Old habits die slow. When you've dealt with enough dangerous people, you learn to rise before they do. Trouble usually starts early. I brewed coffee and stepped outside, the desert air still cool, carrying that faint, dusty smell the wind leaves behind after a long night. I looked toward the stretch of dirt behind my workshop, where 4 rusted chemical barrels had sat just hours earlier. Now the ground was spotless, no footprints, no tire tracks, no trace of the crime. I wasn't covering up what happened. I was preventing someone else from pinning it on me, because that had been the plan all along. And, right on cue, a white Dick vehicle rolled up to my gate. A stiff, square-shouldered man in an orange safety vest stepped out, clipboard tucked under his arm. He looked like the type who ironed his reflective stripes. "Mr. Sanders," he called. "Environmental Quality Department, we received an anonymous report about hazardous waste stored on your property." I sipped my coffee and smiled politely. "Of course you did," I said. "Come on in." He searched everything. The workshop, the storage shed, the fence line, even the dry creek bed on the far side of my acreage. Nothing. Each empty space he checked tightened the confusion on his face. By the time he finished, embarrassment had replaced whatever suspicion he had begun with. "Sir, my apologies," he said finally, clearing his throat. "Everything here is clean." "No worries," I replied. "It's not your fault someone's abusing your hotline." He lingered, uneasy. "There was another report," he admitted, "claiming you were burning solvents behind your workshop. Should we check that area as well?" I gestured toward the wide-open desert. "Be my guest." He walked the entire perimeter again, scanning the soil for burn marks, ash, residue, anything. He found nothing. No barrels, no burn pit, no smoke, no crime. He gave me his card before leaving. "If this happens again, Mr. Sanders, call me directly, please. Someone is deliberately wasting agency time." Oh, I knew exactly who. And she wasn't hiding well. Across the road, half concealed behind a mesquite tree, stood Karen Peterson, arms folded, sunglasses on, staring like a hawk that had just watched its prey fly off the trap. But when the DEEQ inspector left with nothing in his hands but dusty boots and a clean report, Karen's expression cracked. Just a tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth. The look of a gambler watching the dealer sweep away her last chip. She turned and stalked off, stiff with anger. Her plan had failed. Again. And she only had 12 days left before June 30th. Night arrived windless and sharp, the kind of desert stillness that makes every sound stand out like it's happening inside your skull. Jess went to bed early. I stayed up late calibrating a drone battery. Around 2:15 a.m., the heat sensor in my workshop shrieked, a piercing alarm meant for industrial buildings, not a backyard shop. Jess bolted upright. "Nick?" "I've got it." I threw on boots, no socks, and sprinted across the yard. Flames were licking up the dry brush near my storage shed, small but spreading fast, eating their way toward a wall lined with paint thinner, fuel cans, and years' worth of supplies. A fire like that could have turned half my property into a cremation ground. I grabbed the hose and blasted everything sideways, smothering the flames into the bare dirt until the last ember hissed into darkness. When it was over, I was sweating through my shirt despite the cold night air. That's when I saw it. Something shiny, half buried in the char and ash. A glove, half melted, fingertips scorched, the fabric fused into warped plastic. But the wristband, familiar. I'd seen it before. Same cheap brand sold at the discount auto shop. Same gloves used by the kid who tuned HOA golf carts. The same kid who rode a dirt bike that rattled like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. As if on cue, far off in the desert darkness, a dirt bike engine coughed to life, then roared, then faded. Aaron Peterson, Karen's 19-year-old nephew, hot-headed, eager to impress Aunt Karen, and stupid enough to try arson on a property with more cameras than a Home Depot. She hadn't just escalated, she had crossed into arson. And if that fire had reached my workshop wall, the wall that stored every flammable thing a man collects over a lifetime of projects, I might not be standing there at all. Before the adrenaline faded, I headed into the shop and pulled up the thermal camera feed from the hidden unit mounted behind a vent pipe, the one powered by its own battery pack, immune to signal jamming. 2:14 a.m. There he was, a skinny figure sprinting from the flash of fire, running with a slight limp, like he tripped when the flame kicked back. Jumping onto a dirt bike with no headlights. The thermal outline was perfect, narrow shoulders, distinct gait, matching Aaron's height down to the inch. Now I had the glove, I had the bike, and I had the video. Together, they weren't circumstantial. They were prosecutorial. I dropped the glove into an evidence bag and sealed it. The rush wore off, replaced by something quieter, colder, not fear, not anger, recognition. Karen wasn't probing anymore. She was cornering herself. And in any game, chess, law, or war, when someone sacrifices a night out of desperation, what follows is inevitable. I looked toward my house, where Jess and Maddie slept safe behind locked doors. "All right, Karen," I whispered to the last smoking ember. "If you want fire..." I set the evidence bag inside a lockbox and closed the lid. "You're about to walk into one." By the time the sun rose, I'd maybe slept an hour. Jess kept asking me to lie down. I kept telling her I would. I didn't. Instead, I sat in my workshop replaying the thermal footage from the night before. Aaron limping, stumbling, sprinting toward that sputtering dirt bike like a runaway spark. Arson wasn't a game. It wasn't even harassment anymore. It was a message, a coward's message. Around 9 a.m., tires crunched on my gravel drive, a lone sheriff's cruiser. Officer Riley stepped out. No partner, no swagger, just a man carrying the weight of too many bad calls and not enough truth. "Morning, Mr. Sanders." "Morning, Riley." He didn't bother with small talk. "We got another call," he said quietly, "claiming you were burning hazardous material behind your workshop last night. Caller insisted the fire was large and intentional." I exhaled slowly. "And instead of calling the fire department," I said, "she waited 7 hours to call you?" Riley rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, that stood out to me too." He wasn't here to accuse me. He was here because something wasn't adding up, and he knew damn well who the common denominator was. He glanced at the scorched brush. "Looks accidental. Could have been anything. Unless you saw something." I didn't answer. He wasn't ready to know what I had, and I wasn't ready to show my hand. He took a long breath, lowered his voice. "Mr. Sanders, if someone is trying to build a narrative, the next chapter usually gets uglier." This time, the warning landed deeper, because uglier had already happened. And it was coming again. He drove off slowly, watching the HOA offices as he passed, not with suspicion, but with tired irritation. The kind a man feels when he realizes he's been used. By noon, I thought the worst was over for the day. I was wrong. Jess's scream cut through the house like someone had plunged a knife through the drywall. "Nick! Nick! Get in here!" I ran to the kitchen. She sat at the table gripping her phone, face drained of color. "What happened?" I asked. She handed me the screen with shaking hands. An email from her employer. Subject line, "Urgent Ethics Review." Attached, a PDF packet accusing her of falsifying billing records, manipulating client data, and potential embezzlement concerns. The kind of accusations that could end a career, destroy a reputation, take food off a family's table. Jess's voice cracked. Nick, I didn't do any of this." "I know." She was shaking so hard the phone rattled between her fingers. I opened the PDF. A dozen pages. Fabricated charts, faked signatures, false statements clipped from old documents. Her employer had flagged it for investigation, pending Jess's response. I checked the metadata. Document origin, Hollow Creek HOA, admin, PSU user D. Peterson, created 10:17 a.m. Dave, Karen's little lapdog. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. Jess wasn't part of this war. She hadn't provoked anyone. She hadn't even spoken to Karen. She'd baked banana bread for the HOA welcome party the day we moved in. And now she was crying into her hands because someone forged documents to ruin her. I knelt beside her and pulled her close. "We're gonna fix this," I said softly. "I promise you." But inside my chest, something else cracked. Something cold. Something sharp. Karen wasn't just coming after me anymore. She was coming after the people I loved. She'd tried to poison my land, burn my workshop, frame me for environmental crimes. And now she was going after Jess's livelihood. This wasn't harassment. This wasn't HOA nonsense. This was war, and war required strategy. Jess wiped her eyes. "I don't understand why they're doing this, Nick. Why would someone—" "Because desperate people do stupid things," I said, "and Karen is buried in desperation right now." I stood up, grabbed the phone, forwarded everything to myself. Then I pulled up the metadata screen again. There it was, plain as day. Karen wasn't just panicking. She was sloppy. And sloppy people make mistakes, big ones. I placed the evidence on my workbench, clicked on the shop lights, and took a long breath. Riley's words echoed back. Next chapter usually gets uglier. He wasn't wrong. Karen needed leverage. She needed something she could use to control the story. She needed evidence, or the illusion of it. She needed inside my workshop. She needed whatever she thought I was hiding. And she wasn't going to come herself. She'd send someone gullible, someone panicked, someone she thought wouldn't get caught, someone like Dave. I looked around the workshop, at the tool racks, the workbench, the corner where the thermal camera feed was stored. Then I smiled, a slow, cold smile. Jess whispered behind me, "Nick, what are you doing?" "Preparing." "For what?" "For the visit they're about to pay us." I turned off the lights, left the workshop door unlocked, and began setting the trap. I didn't need to wonder when they'd come. Desperation has a schedule, and Karen Peterson was running out of calendar. So I made the workshop look like the jackpot she dreamed of finding. Door cracked just an inch, lights off, except for a faint monitor glow. A stack of folders fanned out on my workbench, organized enough to look important, messy enough to tempt a thief. The top folder wore a label I printed in thick black letters. Evidence. K. Peterson Corruption. Originals. Inside that folder, a few innocuous decoy documents on top. Old maintenance logs, permit drafts, nothing of value, and at the bottom, buried under those harmless sheets, a single piece of paper with one message. "Smile, Dave. You're on candid camera." That note wasn't for Karen. It was for the fool she sent. I set the stage, positioned the trail cam behind the drill press, primed the thermal cam on the rafters, and walked 40 yards back into the dark, sitting beside a pile of lumber with a mug of cold coffee, and waited. I didn't wait long. A click at the workshop door. Soft, nervous. Someone trying to be quiet who didn't know how. I turned my head, slow and controlled. Dave Peterson squeezed inside like a burglar entering his own house. Clumsy, sweating, breathing too loud. His flashlight beam shook so badly it jittered across the walls like a dying firefly. He wasn't built for crime, but Karen didn't need skill. She needed a pawn, and there he was. He spotted the folder almost immediately, hurried over, hands trembling. He opened it, flipped through the decoy paperwork, then reached the bottom sheet. The moment he read the note, he froze. Every muscle in his body locked. His eyes went wide, full panic, full realization. Then, exactly like I hoped, his gaze jerked upward, searching the rafters. Click, perfect thermal capture, full facial profile, undeniable. I stepped out of the shadows, boots crunching gravel. Evening, Dave. He nearly swallowed his tongue. Nick, I wasn't. You broke into my workshop, I said calmly, on camera, with intent to steal evidence. He backed away so fast he stumbled against my workbench, sending sockets and wrenches rolling. I wasn't going to steal anything. Karen she said what? His mouth opened and closed like he'd forgotten how talking worked. She said you took documents from the HOA, that she needed them back, that if I didn't help, she'd blame everything on me. There it is, I said softly. She told you were expendable. He flinched like the word itself hurt. I'm not. She said I was helping the community. No, I interrupted. You're helping her keep her scam alive, and you're the perfect fall guy because you're too scared to say no. He was sweating so hard his shirt stuck to him. I walked closer, stopping just in front of him. You want to know something, Dave? He didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. That folder you're holding, the top papers are fake, decoys, the things Karen wants to see. The bottom sheet, the one that made your heart stop, that one is just for you. He looked down. The incriminating sheet was no longer in the folder. It was crumpled in his fist, proof that he had read it, proof he'd panicked, proof he'd hide it. You're going to pocket that note, I continued. Hide it. Pretend it never existed. And when you bring that folder back to Karen, she'll only see those dull, useless documents on top. She'll think you did exactly what she sent you to do. His voice cracked. Why? Because tomorrow morning, I said, the sheriff's office is paying a visit to the Desert Palms HOA, and Karen needs to be completely unaware. He blinked at me, lost. And if I don't? If you don't, I said with a slow, cold smile, the sheriff will start with you, because you're the one caught on camera committing a felony. Not Karen, not Aaron, you. His knees buckled. He grabbed the workbench to steady himself. I turned toward the door. Behind me, he whispered, voice small and breaking. What do I do? I didn't look back. You do what Karen never learned to do, I said. Tell the truth. I stepped out into the night. Behind me, Dave stood trembling in the dim glow of the workshop, clutching the crumpled note meant only for him, and holding a folder full of meaningless papers he'd be too scared not to deliver. The trap was set, and Karen had already walked into it. I woke at 4:03 a.m., not because of a noise, because of the silence, the kind of silence you only hear before something breaks. Jess and Maddie were asleep. The desert outside was a black ocean. The HOA pavilion sat across the road, dark as a tomb. No lights, no movement, no pastel patrols. No Karen. Perfect. I brewed coffee, walked into my office, and locked the door behind me. Then I powered up the workstation. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the wall of evidence I'd been collecting for weeks. I opened a new encrypted folder and labeled it DPHOA Fraud, Prosecution Package, Full Chain of Evidence. I started dragging files in, one by one, a silent montage. Exhibit A, environmental dumping, trail cam footage, Dave and the other idiot tipping hazardous barrels onto my land at 2:06 a.m., faces clear, truck visible, zero ambiguity. Exhibit B, arson attempt, thermal cam footage of Aaron sprinting away from the shed fire, dirt bike heat signature, glove recovered at the scene, timestamp, coordinates, attempted arson, attempted murder, if the DA wanted to push it. Exhibit C, unauthorized entry and intent to destroy evidence. 2-angle video. Dave breaking into my workshop. Dave opening the labeled folder. Dave panicking. Dave confessing Karen sent him to retrieve the evidence. Intent. Motive. Chain of command. Karen had no idea she'd already lost. Exhibit D, financial fraud. The altered HOA amendment. 3 forged signatures, 2 notarizations from people who had moved out of state, plus the scanned copy of the $42,500 check Karen cashed from the Golf Development Company, the deposit she was hiding from her own board. Exhibit E, targeted harassment of a private citizen, the fake environmental complaints, the bogus fire code violation, the building citation, all filed within 48 hours of each other, all anonymous, all originating from the HOA IP block. Exhibit F, defamation and interference with employment. Jess. The forged letter claiming my wife had committed financial misconduct. PDF metadata showing it was created by DP-admin2, Karen's office computer. I stared at the folder as the final file dropped in. 6 exhibits. 6 nails for Karen's coffin. I compressed the package, encrypted it with a one-time key, and drafted the email. 2. District Attorney at county.gov. CC, Environmental Crimes Unit, Fire Investigation Division, Sheriff Intelligence Group Subject. Urgent. Multiple felony violations by Desert Palms, HOA, RICO pattern identified. The body was simple. Full evidence package attached. Includes environmental dumping, arson attempt, forgery, harassment, witness intimidation, and attempted destruction of evidence. Request immediate action. Nicholas Sanders, Escroner, return. I hit send. Then I waited. 37 seconds later, my phone buzzed. A reply from the DA's office. Asset received. Units mobilizing at first light. Do not engage further. I let out a long, slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was done. No arguing, no shouting matches at the gate, no HOA meetings, no more midnight sabotage. The machine was turning now. Bigger than Karen, bigger than Desert Palms, bigger than any HOA stunt she could pull. I stepped out onto my porch with my coffee. The HOA office across the street was still silent, still dark, still peaceful. Karen was asleep in there, probably dreaming she'd won, probably dreaming Dave had saved her, probably dreaming her little kingdom was still intact. She had no idea that sunrise would bring police cruisers, detectives, and a warrant with her name printed at the top. She had no idea the walls were already closing in. She had no idea that by noon tomorrow, she would be in handcuffs, and I would be standing right here, coffee in hand, watching the show. The desert sky was still purple when I stepped outside with my first cup of coffee. It was 6:41 a.m. Cool, quiet, still. The kind of morning Arizona only gives you before the heat rolls in like a freight train. The HOA pavilion sat across the road, beige and bland as ever. Karen's white Mercedes was parked crooked, like she'd stumbled in at midnight and didn't care how she left it. I took a seat on my porch. I didn't have to wait long. At 7:02 a.m., a pair of headlights crested the far end of Desert Palms Drive. Not HOA sedans, not code enforcement, not some resident in a golf cart. These were black SUVs, county issue, investigations division. 2 more cruisers followed behind them, one marked, one unmarked. They moved slowly, not with hurry, but certainty, like a tide coming in. Unstoppable. I didn't smile, not yet. I just took another sip. The SUVs rolled into the pavilion parking lot, fanning out like a practiced routine. Doors opened in sync. Officers stepped out with clipboards, warrant packets, and that particular kind of confidence you only see in people who know they're about to turn someone's life upside down. And leading them? Officer Riley, hat on, jaw set, eyes sharp. The same man who used to get called to my house over fake HOA complaints. The same man Karen talked down to. The same man who once warned me, these things get uglier before they end. Today he wasn't here for me. He was here because of me. At 7:10, Riley approached the pavilion door and knocked. Firm, official, final, no answer. He knocked again, harder. The door cracked open, and Karen appeared. Hair in curlers, robe half-tied, sunglasses still on like she was trying to disguise her face from morning light. She blinked up at the officers, confused, then forced a brittle smile. Officers? Is there a problem? Did someone report vandalism? I've been meaning to file a few things. Ma'am, Riley said, voice calm but carrying weight, I need you to step outside. Now. Karen froze. Then she laughed, a small, nervous titter. This must be a mistake. I'm the HOA president. You must be looking for... Riley didn't flinch. Mrs. Peterson, this is a search and seizure warrant. Step outside. He handed her the document. Her face drained of color as she scanned the first line. Forgery? She whispered. Environmental dumping? Arson? Conspiracy? RICO? She looked up at Riley with a flicker of the old arrogance. There must be some misunderstanding. Someone is trying to sabotage our community. I need to call... She reached for her phone. Riley gently but firmly caught her wrist. No calls. That device is now evidence. Karen's lips parted. Her glasses slid down her nose. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked small and scared. Wait, hold on. There's no reason for... Riley turned her around. Karen Peterson, you are under arrest for multiple felony counts, including... He kept reading and reading and reading. Her knees wobbled. One of the other officers steadied her as Riley snapped with the cuffs on. The metallic click echoed across the morning like a punctuation mark. Jess stepped onto the porch beside me, rubbing her eyes. It's happening, she whispered. It's happening. We watched in silence. Neighbors started emerging from their beige houses in robes and slippers, drawn by the flashing lights. Phones came out, whispers rippled. Some stared with shock, some with relief, some with satisfaction they no longer bothered to hide. Dave was there too. He stood behind a lamppost, pale and trembling, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on Karen like he was watching a verdict being delivered on his own soul. Karen saw him, her face twisted into a mix of betrayal and disbelief. You! She screamed, trying to lunge toward him. You were supposed to... Riley held her steady. Ma'am, stop. Karen's voice cracked. This is his fault. His. He didn't get the documents. He... I heard Riley's reply, clear as day. Ma'am, we have all the documents we need. Karen's mouth fell open. She looked toward my house, right toward me, and that was when our eyes met. Just for a second. She waited for me to smile, gloat, taunt her, rub it in. I didn't. I simply lifted my coffee mug in her direction, just a slight tilt, a polite little morning greeting, and then I turned and walked back inside. The most violent insult possible. Indifference. Behind me, she screamed my name, but I didn't look back. By 7:38 a.m., Karen was in the back of a cruiser, tears streaking down her cheeks, sunglasses dangling from one ear. 3 other board members were seated in the second SUV, hands cuffed, faces blank. Desert Palms, HOA, had collapsed. The raid continued for hours, officers in and out with boxes of files, hard drives, laptops, bags of shredded documents. One officer even came out holding a desktop PC tower like it was radioactive. Riley supervised everything. Before he left, he glanced across the street, gave me a tiny nod, a silent thank you. I nodded back. He got in his car and drove away. The street grew quiet again, but Desert Palms would never be the same. Tomorrow, the news would break. Next week, the indictments would stack. Next month, the trials would begin. And Karen Peterson, the queen of pastel tyranny, would be sitting in a cell, replaying the moment I lifted my coffee to her. The moment she realized she didn't lose to noise or force or fear. She lost to someone who simply refused to bow. The morning after the raid, Desert Palms felt hollow, like a town after a carnival packs up and leaves. Same streets, same houses, same faded stucco, but the noise was gone. The buzzing, the tension, the feeling that someone was always watching. It was quiet, too quiet. I walked out to my gate, coffee in hand. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky had that soft silver glow that only lasts a few minutes in the desert. A light wind rolled off the ridge and rustled the mesquite trees. No squad cars, no HOA vans, no Karen. For the first time in months, I could hear my own breathing. Jess stepped beside me, leaned her head on my shoulder. It's over, isn't it? She whispered. Yeah, I said. It's over. But something bothered me. Not fear, not anger, just a memory. A memory of how many people get stepped on by HOAs like this every day. People without my background, without cameras, without a stubborn streak carved into them like bedrock. I wasn't about to let this all fade away quietly. So that afternoon, I built something. Not a billboard, not a LED screen like my first idea. Something smarter, cleaner, lawsuit-proof. A steel post, 12 feet tall, bolted into concrete by my gate. On it, a weatherproof placard with a giant black and white QR code, big enough to scan from the street. Above it, a simple metal plate, HOA Watch, Public Record Archive. Below it, scan for truth. No faces, no accusations, no defamation, just a link. A link to a website I built overnight, my little side project I named HOAWatch.us. It held everything, every video, every report, every document, every date, every timestamp, all posted as public records with citations, redactions, and legal footers that'd make a federal judge smile. Totally legal, totally public, totally devastating. Around 5 p.m., the first couple from Desert Palms walked over. An older pair, late 60s maybe, married long enough that they finished each other's size. The husband stared at the QR code like it was a UFO. The wife scanned it. Her eyes widened. She turned to him. "Harold," she whispered, "you need to see this." By sunset, 7 more people had scanned it. By midnight, 32. By noon the next day, over 100. Some left notes at my gate. "Thank you for standing up." We didn't know how deep it went. "We were afraid to speak. Thank you for not being." One note simply read, "About damn time." A man from the interim HOA board came by, mid-30s, nervous, holding his hat like it might run away. "Mr. Sanders," he said, "we're trying to rebuild, cleaner, honest. We could use your guidance." I shook my head. "I'm not joining your board, son." He laughed nervously. "Didn't think so. But," I added, "if you ever want to know what not to do, that site's a good start." He nodded and left, relieved. Jess got her job offer reinstated, plus a written apology from the school board. They traced the forged accusation back to Karen's office printer. She framed the letter, not out of pride, out of closure. Maddie, meanwhile, took her science fair project, a scale model of our property with labeled camera placements, all the ways to regionals. Judges loved it. Our dog trotted around with her like a deputy on patrol. And me? Most evenings I sat on the porch, same spot as always, facing the road with a cold drink, watching the desert shift colors as the sun dipped behind the ridge. Sometimes neighbors walked by and waved. Sometimes folks from other towns came to scan the code. Sometimes I saw Dave in the distance, head down, humbled, quieter than he used to be. But Karen, she never walked by. Last I heard, she'd pled out. 14 years. Federal facility. No HOA meetings in there. Good. Some people shouldn't be given power. Some people can't handle it. And a few people should never have had a clipboard in the first place. One evening, Maddie asked me, "Dad, why'd you build that QR thing? Isn't it over?" I put my arm around her and watched the sun sink behind the hills. "It's over for us," I said, "but not for everyone. Sometimes the best way to fight bullies is to show people the playbook." She nodded like she understood more than a kid should have to. And as the porch lights came on, and the desert cooled, and the quiet settled in around us like a blanket, I felt something I hadn't felt since we moved here. Peace. Real peace. The kind you earn, the kind you defend, the kind you keep.